Hi, thank you for checking out my presentation. The name is Function and Form in YouTube How-To Videos. My name is Mark Hammond. I'm a member of the Faculty of Foreign Language Studies, which is in the Institute of Liberal Arts and Science at Kanazawa University, a national university in Japan. Today's presentation, I'll give you a little bit of background and talk about my purpose and research questions. It is a corpus-based study, so I'll give you some corporate descriptions and then the method of analysis. I'll give you a summary of the findings, just so it can help to frame what maybe many of you are interested in, is how you might be able to use this in your own classroom, which is what I'll do towards the end of the presentation. So to talk about the project background, some of my past projects, in 2016, I was working with craft professionals to see how they could kind of use hands-on workshops, in English with visiting tourists. I also looked at ceramic artists, demonstrative artist talks that the international artist community gives with each other, using English in many situations. And my PhD project was also focused on how people do things and kind of how-to type of discourse, and looked at procedural monologues in scientific, technical, industrial, sports, and really everyday context. The underlying goal, the reason why I'm interested in this kind of stuff is I think it's important that we try to prepare some students to use English for occupational purpose or English for specific purpose context, where they might be required to kind of tell somebody how to do something. So even though these are focused on YouTube type of discourse, it could also be perfectly fine to use this stuff in, say, like a factory when you're explaining how to use machinery or equipment. So when I say procedural monologue, what exactly do I mean by that? It's pretty simple, just giving instructions or directions for a procedural how-to X task. Let's just use how to make coffee for an example to illustrate a good procedural monologue. It's going to be produced by a single speaker. There certainly is interactive procedural discourse where you're going to be asking and answering questions, but this is just a straight monologue. It has a specialized sequence for a predetermined task. So if we're going to give a monologue about coffee, you have to add the coffee, drip the coffee, let it accumulate, and then we have accomplished the task. So there's definitely a set sequence to get to that final task, final goal of the task. It's going to involve physical manipulation objects. There's certainly, you could say, there's how-to videos like how to make friends or how to get more hits on your website. To me, that's not what I'm looking at when I say procedural monologue. It's going to be something that you're doing with your hands or maybe other parts of your body. And it's always accompanied with a demonstration of the activity. So you are doing it and talking about it at the same time. Research questions, I want to know what are the salient communicative functions and linguistic features that are associated with how-to videos produced by L1 speakers of English. And the second question is, which of those functions and features I discover in one are lacking in how-to videos produced by Japanese first-year undergraduates? And maybe this is applicable for low-level proficiencies in any context. And by low level, I think maybe the max maybe B1 on the CFER scale is kind of what the students, at least in this study, I could estimate they're about. Theoretical underpinnings, register analysis, ESB genre analysis, researchers like Douglas Biber, Susan Conrad, Jesse Egbert, definitely if you're interested in research analysis, and definitely John Swales, the Swales tradition of ESB genre analysis are kind of the things that the theory that is really the backbone of what I was doing here. In the handpick corpus, handpick means hands-on procedural instructional corpus. This is the L1 corpus. I took 100 YouTube videos that are publicly posted. They're all single speaker. I was looking for, generally speaking, American-ish accents. I didn't do this to make any statement about regional English or about world Englishes. it just seemed to be a better way to go about looking for salient patterns if I had just one variety of English. Same thing with gender. There's more males than there are females, but I'm not trying to say anything specifically about gender. That's just kind of what happened when I was looking at the videos. They're 3 to 5 minutes, so relatively short for most YouTube videos. They're mostly live recorded, so the person is doing something looking at a camera. He's not doing a voiceover, doing something off camera. And there's 100 text, which is about 50,000 words. I won't go through everything that's here, but you can see the stuff that I put into the corpus, things like power tools or sports or cooking or computer, using equipment for science, lab stuff, emergencies, repairing items, nursing practice, and just kind of miscellaneous things. And you can see examples of some of those tasks. So this is the L1 corpus, or native speaker corpus, I guess, if you prefer that term. The TEPIC corpus, Te is the Japanese word for hand. So this is the hand-picked corpus for Japanese students. So this is the student corpus. I use 50 videos from undergraduates at my university. There's a mix of majors spanning from the humanities all the way to the hard sciences and medical students. Here I could control what I put into the corpus, so I just split it 50-50, 3 to 5 minutes, so again, pretty short, live recorded, and there was 50 textiles, so about 7,500 words. Again, I was looking for variety in task. The prompt that I used is down here. I just asked the students, make anything. I gave some examples, like how to cook something, how to use software, how to throw a baseball, etc. Maybe because how to cook something was the first idea, I got a little bit more food preparation than other things, but I did get a good variety of them making their own video. I wanted them to have a task that they felt comfortable with, that they could, so they didn't really have to cognitively process the task itself, and that would kind of get in the way of their English. The method of analysis, after taking the videos and transcribing them, I was coding at communicative function at the utterance level. So for each pretty much sentence that they said, I tried to determine what function that was making a contribution towards. I also used the NVivo software suite to kind of manage and aggregate my coding. As you can see, this is just a quick example of a transcript. To start off with 23 grams of coffee, this is talking about an item introduction. So this would be gray. The green code was advice and preference. So yeah, I recommend getting one. It makes brewing at home a lot easier. The red here is an actual procedural step, things that you would do to accomplish that task. For quantitative analysis, I used the Sketch Engine corpus management platform. I used the tools there to normalize rates of frequency, using the BNC Spoken 2014 corpus as a reference corpus, just so I could tell actually what was more frequent in the different the different corpora. I also used the collocation, the POS, parts of speech tagging, and Ngram tools, just to kind of see what the salient patterns I could find. I started with pronouns, modals, and semimodals, conditional adverbial phrases, and imperative and present verbs. This was from Biber and Egbert's study with the Online Registers of English project. They had a sub-register in their project that was the how-to instructional sub-register. So I kind of borrowed their findings to look for my features. And I also noticed when I was transcribing just things like vague language, spatial reference language, like right, left, up, down, and WH clefs. Something like what you want to do is, that would be a WH clef. So this construction I found to be a real interesting place to look for difference in the amounts of frequency. My results for qualitative coding, I identified 10 recursive functions, meaning that these happened numerous places all throughout the transcript. The top 3 is procedural activity, actually telling about the steps, giving advice and warning, and talking about the things you need to accomplish the task. Moderately frequent were things like reasons, like again with our coffee example, the scale will let me get an exact amount, so that's the reason why I'm using the scale. Results, after you do this, this will happen. Options, you could use a non-paper filter instead of the one I'm using. Clarification, giving a little bit more details, the kind made of metal. situational context. The entire process will take 5 pores. These were moderately frequent functions, and less frequent stuff, but still salient, were things like confirmation or marking the steps. Like, now we're ready to make our first pour. Okay, let's move on to preparing the cup. In addition to that, there was 3 non-recursive functions. These occurred one time. So these would be much more in terms of like Swales's steps and moves kind of paradigm. There's the opening where you say, hi, my name's Mark. I've been making coffee for many years now. The how-to X statement, today I'm going to tell you how to drip a delicious cup of coffee. And the ending is basically signing off, okay, that's all. I hope next time you make coffee you can have success. So these come at specific points in the discourse, and they're non-recursive. If I look at the difference between the two, the handpick, remember, handpick is the L1 speakers. On the right here, the TAPIC, these are the students. They look, at a glance, they look pretty similar. Both of them, the big chunk of the pie is talking about procedures. But if we kind of take a look at some things here, advice and warning, definitely the L1 speakers are doing much more of that. Here it's the second most frequently occurring function. Students, it was way down, almost their last. It was like 3%. Here it's 12%. So that's definitely a big difference. Things like giving options, talking about the situation, not as big of a gap, but there's certainly a gap there. A lot of the things too really just depended on, the students didn't produce a whole lot of text. For example, things like their how-to statement, their ending. This was taking up a larger chunk of their discourse. For the L1 speakers, it didn't take up as much because they were using more language for these other things. So that's kind of what I gleaned from the qualitative analysis. From quantitative analysis, looking at frequency, and this is based on per 10,000 tokens, definitely WH clefs, and the graph here doesn't really look like it, but this is huge. This was happening at 22 times per 10,000 tokens. In the BNC, this is an extremely rare pattern. You can see it happens at 0.004 per 10,000 tokens. So this is extremely rare. And the students didn't do this at all. So things like what we'll do next is grind the beans. That was really, really pervasive, a really frequent occurring grammatical structure that was in the text. Also, things like the semimodal going to use the signal procedures, like next we're just going to do this. Sometimes a WH clef with a going to, like, okay, what I'm going to do now is we are going to. So there was lots of going tos going on, and conditionals, especially with be verbs to give advice and options. So these were the things that the difference in the frequency of these patterns. Definitely the WH clefs I was really excited about. I wrote a paper that's really not part of today's presentation, but if you're interested, you can see the reference in the back. The paper just came out last month. What this allowed me to do, and I won't spend our time today going through every function here, but if you want, if you're watching the video, you can pause the video and you can use these. I'd also be happy to mail these to you if you want a hard copy of them. For example, for things like procedural activities, these were the linguistic features using a pronoun with going to, a pronoun with want, a pronoun with let, a modal with something like go ahead and these are some of the examples they use to talk about procedural activity. And also, again, I'll just keep the slide up here in case you want to freeze the screen later and really zoom in on each particular feature. But assembling these charts lets you get to the next step, which is, how do you use this in the classroom? And before we talk about using the specific communicative functions and the grammar associated with them, maybe just talk about your general approach. You could either introduce the videos in class and talk about those grammar points and how they relate to the functions, and then ask the students to make a video and then bring it to class and kind of analyze and do some follow-up activities. Another way to do it is just give them the task. I think definitely the students know of this genre. They probably, in their own language, they have gone to YouTube and used it to figure out how to do things. So ask them just to make any kind of video, bring it into class, and then introduce some of the teaching learning activities. and then maybe have them revise it, have them do it a second time in that case. So this might work good with a simple activity. They can just update what they learned in the classroom. Activities you could use, obviously gap fill kind of stuff to introduce the patterns. So for example, try to use these patterns to tell your partner how to make a cup ramen. Students all know how to do this. So using things like a pronoun with going to or what you want to do is, you could create these kind of activities and then have them look at an illustration like this. Or you could even, show them a video, or it doesn't have to be making ramen. You could come up with your own task or a series of them. Discussion activities. Again, sticking with the ramen task, you could say, okay, let's have a discussion. What do you do to kind of accessorize your ramen, or what do you have any special tricks you do when you're making ramen? And then have them use patterns. For example, now what I like to do is add an egg, or now what you need to do is keep the lid shut. So here you give them a real kind of context to practice those WH clefs. You could also do a listening activity. Show them a video and say, okay, we're going to zero in on the functions of giving advice or warning. So let's watch this video here about Scott talking about diving equipment, and he's going to give you 3 special advice. So let's listen for key phrases like "be sure" or "I would." That's going to signal that Scott's giving us advice, and then write this on the worksheet, for example. Students could also code their own functions. You could pick out a video that you think they might all be into, prepare the transcript, and transcript preparation is pretty simple now with YouTube. You can just rip the transcript, and then you might need to check it, and create your own transcript and leave the blank side open where they can have a discussion and say, okay, I think this is the opening, this is the how-to statement. Here he's giving a warning, here he's talking about the procedure. So this could also be something you could do in the classroom. Just some real broad conclusions to kind of sum up here. Definitely how-to video, there is predictable communicative functions, I think, in the genre. And there's certain linguistic features that frequently occur with those functions. So it is definitely something we can teach. What is next for me? And this is definitely an ongoing project. I had hoped by this time in the project, I would actually be doing this in the classroom and teaching. My teaching schedule and situation kind of changed a little bit, so I don't have the liberty right now, but I want to implement these in classes that I'm teaching and then collect new data and see if the students were kind of motivated. Did it really change the way that they made videos if I give them kind of the before and after? Future ideas, students could definitely attempt to follow instructions. Students could say, I'm going to show you how to do something, and see if other students can understand it. And then maybe connect it to things they're doing in their other classes. Like say, if you had engineering students, or let's say chemistry students who are working in a lab, have them make a video that's related to actually what they're doing in their other classes. So you could coordinate with other colleagues at your institutes to see if they can, you can connect the things that they're learning in other places. Okay, pretty fast. That's about all the time I have. Here's my references. The middle one here is what I was saying. This is what I just recently published last month or so, if you are interested in that. And then there's something I did recently, or not in the past, for the ceramic artist type of procedural monologues. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the conference. Goodbye.